Schwab's been in the news this week with some prominent retail investors threatening to pull their accounts from the platform if the company voted against Elon Musk's $1 trillion payday. Late yesterday, the firm said it would support that plan. Omar Aguilar is Schwab Asset Management CEO and CIO. It's good to see you. Thanks for spending some time with us. So the statement that you all put out yesterday said in part, quote, "We firmly believe that supporting this proposal aligns both management and shareholder interest, ensuring the best outcome for all parties involved." Was this your decision to vote yes?
Yes, Scott, and we are very clear. We have been doing proxy voting since we started our mutual fund business. We take our fiduciary responsibility of represent shareholders very seriously. We have a very systematic process for approaching this, and this was not the exception. We had already made a decision on how we're going to vote on Tesla shares, probably like 2 weeks ago when we started going this, and we were just waiting for the votes to be casted. And so the process aligns to our philosophy of enhanced shareholder value. That's what we promised shareholders, and that's how we did.
Why do you think, though, this particular pay package aligns with the shareholders' best interest when the proxy advisors say it does not, some large pension funds say it does not, and Schwab, by the way, voted no on prior pay packages for Musk as well. So if it didn't align then for Schwab, why does it today?
Well, we voted, the majority of all the proxies in this particular case with management. And again, this is a lot of what we call mirror vote, when we actually believe the factors that drive these pieces align to the long-term value of the stock. And that's exactly how we did. Now, in the past, the conditions that were, part of the packages, the previous years were not exactly the same as they are today. And we actually like to see what management does when they put performance aligned with the potential results for shareholders. So that's the big differences of what was before and what it is now.
Okay, so do you think because it's laid out in, it's large, obviously, the number garners all of the attention, of course, but if you laid out the steps that Mr. Musk has to reach for the tranches that he's going to get, that gives you comfort in the end result.
That is exactly correct. At the end, the shareholders are the ones that will basically see the value if these milestones get met.
How much did the threat from some pretty influential retail investors play in this decision, if at all?
None. As I said, the decision that we make for all our proxy votes is based on a very systematic process. And in this particular case, our decisions, were already made before we actually got close to the deadline.
What do you think, if anything, it says about just the power of retail, the power of the retail investor, especially around a name that has such a, what would be described as a cult following like a Tesla does? Well,
we've always been an advocate for retail investors, Scott. As you know, Schwab's name, basically has been on that, and we encourage investors to express their opinion. That is a big part of this. Now, we represent all shareholders, not just retail, shareholders. And that's the reason we, not just for this particular case, but for all the thousands of companies that we make proxy votes, that's how we actually have that systematic process that basically maximizes shareholder value, and it is in their best interest.
Were you surprised at all, though, that even if it didn't factor into your decision because you suggested it was already decided, were you surprised at least that there was this uprising, if you will, among this retail cohort? You either vote with us or we're out, and we'll just go to another platform. And by the way, there are more platforms now that exist that didn't before.
Yes, and it is interesting that you mentioned that, because as you pointed out, while the conditions were different in the past, we made a decision that was different in this one. So we were not surprised, but obviously, that doesn't necessarily change the process that we go for applying to all these votes that we place.
Let's talk about the markets. I did with Liz Ann, seems pretty positive, although wouldn't be surprised if we had a bit of a pullback of sorts between now and the end of the year. I read off a list of things from Tony Pasquarello of Goldman Sachs of why he remains responsibly bullish. Economy's good, you're going to get rate cuts, you've got all this AI capex. How do you see things?
Yes, well, there's a lot of positives that are going into the market, a lot of tailwinds that are going in there. Clearly, the biggest, positive things continue to just be driven in the market, like monetary policy, fiscal policy, big part of that big, beautiful bill could actually, increase that capex that we go. I think the concerns that we have tend to be more about the concentration and more about that capex seems to be very driven by AI and not necessarily in other parts of the market. And I think as Lisanne, may have discussed, the K-shape of the consumer is obviously something that we are watching very closely.
Do you think, though, that, and I asked her this question too, whether you think the K-shaped recovery, the bifurcation of consumers matters at all to market performance? Yes, the high end is doing exceptionally well, and the low end maybe not so much. There are more inflation pressures on the lower end. Of course, the market just doesn't seem to care.
Well, but what is interesting is that the headline market, it is also fairly, concentrated, and it's also in a K-shape. The top, 15% of the S&P 500 are driving a lot of the returns for the market once again.
That's a good way of putting it. It's a K-shaped market.
It's a K-shaped market too, and it's a K-shaped even earnings season if you think about it, right? So those that are actually beating the market seem to be, doing really well, and the ones that just missed a little bit or have a not so positive outlook are actually underperforming.
If I walk around this convention center today at what is, as I said to Lisanne, your Super Bowl, I mean, it's Schwab's big event. There are 5,000 people here, and you've got 2,800 or so advisors. How much am I going to hear about alternatives relative to what I would have in the past?
I would probably say a lot. So the three things that people are actually very interested in this convention, but also in our latest, wealth management survey, is that they're looking for, private assets. They're looking for alternatives. They're looking for tax efficiency. They're still looking for indexing, and they're looking for crypto. Those are big, themes that we continue to hear, and we have heard from other, parts of our clients.
I appreciate your time very much, Omar. Thank you. It's good to see you, and thank you for sitting with us.
Thank you.
That's Schwab's Omar Aguilar right here.